Hello, hello, hello. We are now more than halfway through the year and it's time for my second video looking at the best indie games released this year. In this one we're taking a look at April, May and June, and I'll have a link below the like button for my first video looking at January, February and March if you're interested. But without further ado, let's get started. First out, a special shout out to DELTARUNE. I haven't played this one. It's really not my cup of tea, but it's kind of crazy not to mention this game, as it sits at overwhelmingly positive on Steam with 51,000 reviews, which means 98% of the reviews are positive. And this is the follow-up to Undertale from the developer Toby Fox. And if you haven't played Undertale, it's kind of an old school RPG with a very interesting story and very interesting battle system. I do love the characters within these games. I don't know, I just have a hard time making it through these games, but I would applaud you to at least take a look at it because you don't get games like these every day. But let's move on to the games I've actually played and the games I think are the best that have been released this past 3 months. First up is the Precinct. This is an open world type game where you play as a police officer. It's taking place in the 80s and you really feel it and it looks the part. It makes the game a bit more straightforward and simple as well. You don't have to take technology into consideration, and I kind of like the grittiness of the 80s. And the isometric viewpoint is kind of cool as well. Reminds me a lot of the old school GTA games, only that you are on the other side of the law in this one. And you'll have to do some actual police work in this one, and I think most of it is handled pretty well. Stopping drug drivers, surveillance from a helicopter, stopping robberies, car chases, or just some regular investigations. You'll do it all and a much more in this game. It can get a bit repetitive, especially with how arrests are done, but in general the variety is pretty good all the way through. I would say the story isn't the strongest, same goes for the voice lines for all the characters, but I think it's fine. I think the controls are pretty good as well, the cars feel great to handle, the shooting is okay, but calling in support when you're in a pinch is a nice addition and really helps. And overall, I really like the style of the game. It feels kind of like an 80s cop movie, and I think the game is well worth playing through. Next up is Soulstone Survivors. It's finally hit 1.0. It's been in early access since 2022, and they have added a ton of content into this game. You have more than 20 characters. They all have 4 different weapons you can upgrade. The weapons bring different skills to the table. Each character has their own passive skill tree, and within the skill tree you have an ability that will kind of change the character in an interesting way. Take the Sentinel for example, a character that uses a bow. Within its skill tree you have a Nature's Guardian, and you can now track down a panther and ride it while in combat. Or my favorite character, the Necromancer. He can collect body parts to build an abomination that fights for you. And if that ain't enough, you have, I think, well over 80 different passive runes you can equip on your character as well to increase passive stats. There are more than 350 skills within the game, so when you level up by killing enemies, you can equip 6 different skills. All these skills can be leveled up, and you also have passive stats for your character. And within a run you'll easily level over 100 times. So there is a lot of build potential within this game. What do tend to happen with this game is that it gets a bit overwhelming. There are so many enemies on the screen and your skills become so massive and they'll proc so often that you won't see anything that is happening on the screen. You can lower the opacity of all your skills, but it's kind of a shame to remove all the effects just for you to be able to see what is going on. It feels like they should have solved this in a better way, but it is what it is. The maps are also a bit boring. They're all squares with different themes. I wish there was something more interesting going on the maps, but you at least have 3 different game modes and they all are very different, which is nice to see. Overall, I think this is a really cool experience with a ton of build potential, and most of the characters are really diverse and play differently. I would say there are too many mages that are kind of the samey with different colors, but other than that you have some really interesting characters. But I do definitely recommend the game as it is one of the most comprehensive action roguelites out there. Next up is the Slormancer, a fast-paced action RPG that kind of has an hilarious story to it. The opening sequence, the opening story of the game is amazing. I love the humor within this game. They really don't give a fuck about anything and just go with the flow. The build potential within this game is fun as well. You have only 3 characters, a mage, a melee and a ranger, but they can be built into very different types of powerhouses within each of the 3 archetypes. You have a a lot of different spells and equipment to mess around with. The game definitely starts off a bit slow, and I do think the overall presentation is a bit formulaic, as you have a few different zones and they all have very specific areas and missions attached to these zones. But once you get through like half of the story, it starts to open up a bit, and once you get to the end, you can really become kind of crazy powerful. You'll have basically procedural dungeons at the end. There is a ton of loot in all different tiers for you to collect. I wish the story held up all the way through. It's definitely best in the beginning, but falls off as you proceed throughout the game. This one I've also spent a lot of time in early access. It entered early access back in 2021, but has now finally hit 1.0. So a lot of time and tweaking have gone into this title, and I think it shows. It feels like a very finished game, and if you enjoy it, you have a ton of content in this one. Then we have Bionic Bay, a fast platformer in 2D, where you are solving puzzles and dodging deadly traps. This one does not put the most emphasis into the story, rather the gameplay, and I love the gameplay in this one. It definitely has that old school 2D platformer style to it, but really brings some fresh ideas to the table with, for example, the swapping ability. Can't really say I have seen this before, but you can basically swap place with an item you tag. You can't do this with everything within the game, but most things I would say, and playing around with it is really fun and encouraged as well, I would say. And hot swapping items with you to solve a puzzle on the go is really satisfying. But there are also other abilities like slowing down time, so you'll have some variety throughout the game. The same goes for the challenges you face. There is a good variety throughout the whole game. They aren't the hardest, but there are definitely sections where you will retry a few times before making it through. The controls are really good as well, very precise as they have to be in this type of a game. Your character is a bit flimsy, but that seems to be by design and kind of makes the game a bit more hilarious. The aesthetics of the game is amazing, very ominous and eerie with these large factories and whatnot. Just an excellent puzzle platformer. Then we have Into the Restless Ruins. This one is really interesting. I love the concept here, as it is a roguelike deck builder, but you're also building the dungeon you're going through. So when you start a run, you have your starting room, and on the other side you have the boss room. And it's your job to build the dungeon to the boss. And you do this by playing cards from your deck. You can only place a set amount of cards each round depending on the cost of the cards, and then each round you get to go through the dungeon you have built so far, gaining resources and trying to open up the next section of the map until you get to the boss. The interesting thing when you're going through the dungeon is that you have a torch, and this torch will burn out after a while, so you'll have to be kind of quick going through the dungeon, because once it's burned out, you will lose damage continuously until you die. You don't have a map either when you're going through the dungeon, so you'll have to memorize the layout while being attacked and attacking enemies. It's a really interesting concept, and the room layout, the different types of modifiers, the interactions with the rooms, all makes this a very interesting and fun experience. The game does have a few shortcomings. I think the combat is dog shit. You basically auto attack everything that comes in range, so it becomes a backpedaling until the enemy dies before you can proceed. A much more interesting combat system would have been needed for this to be more interesting. Same goes for the bosses, they are boring. I don't think I ever died against a boss. You just avoid them, circle around them until you do enough damage until they're dead. But I do think there's a lot of potential in the idea of this game, and I do think it's worth playing, because building your own dungeon is fun. There are so many layers of strategy within it, and then going through it every night with the stress of the torch burning out and you trying to remember the layout of your own dungeon. I must say that part is genius. It's not executed perfectly, but again, it's well worth checking out this game. Then we have Cast and Chill. As the title alludes to, it's a very chill game. And I must say, it's not too much to this game. You catch fish, you get money, and you upgrade your equipment. It's a very nice and chill game, but it's not much more than that. The progression and catching fish is fun. Fighting the fish is not the hardest, but you have some engagement with the focus and then the tension on the line, so you'll actively have to play the game. And then you have different equipment that will attract different types of fish. I think there are about 50 different fish within the game. And I must say, I love the art style of this game. There's some insane details within this pixelized game. It's crazy how much detail they can get into a game that is just made up of a few pixels. Then there's also 2 different types of modes for this game. You have the active one where you play and catch the fish, but then you can also put the game in idle. Your character will then catch fish while you are doing something else. The game will play itself, or at least the part where you are catching fish. I don't really know if I like this, but then again it's a single play game, so who really cares? I'm usually not much for games about catching fish, but this one is very different and I like it very much. Next up is Drop Duchy, which is a really interesting game. Kind of Tetris, but also a city builder, a deck builder, within kind of a roguelike formula. The deck will be made up of your buildings that you will drop down through the Tetris board, as well as all the resources. And you'll have to match the buildings with the right resources to actually get the resources and troops as the Tetris blocks are falling down. Otherwise, you won't be able to attack or win over the enemy. If that ain't enough, you will also have to place the enemy's buildings as they're falling down as well, and the game becomes very strategic and kind of hectic as these blocks are always falling down. Outside of the main board, you have a standard roguelike map with different encounters, choices, new cards, shops, and a boss at the end. It may sound more complicated than it actually is, but it is a lot of fun and very strategic in how you place down all the blocks, trying to maximize all the resources you can get, and of course minimizing the enemy's troops. Can't ever say I was expecting the style of Tetris being used in a game like this. Next up is Tower Wizard. I highlighted this game in my recent YouTube short, as I really got addicted to this little small game. It's kind of an incremental game, clicker, resource management type of a game, where you're building up a wizard's tower. And I really got addicted to this one, so much that I played through the whole game in one sitting. And I think it took like 10 hours or something. Sure, you don't have to be present at all times, but there is always something to upgrade within the game. As the tower grows bigger, there is new stuff to take into account and upgrade. Once your progress slows down, you can prestige, gain permanent upgrades and start over. And when you start over, upgrades will go much quicker than last time. It's a very cheap game, only $3, and it definitely has an ending to it. It's not a game that has microtransactions or try to suck money out of you. It's just a nice compact little experience, a very satisfying experience where you upgrade and power up a wizard's tower. It's kind of hard to describe this type of a game because it is so basic in its structure, but it is also so satisfying to just play. And it might not be for everyone, but it will definitely suck you in if you like these types of games until you're done with it. Then we have Gnomes, a turn-based tower defense with roguelike progression. I don't think this game has the best visuals, but the gameplay is really good and interesting. So it is a tower defense where gnomes are defending against attacking goblins. And before you start, you get to choose a team of gnomes that are going to defend. The gnomes can be moved each round, but your buildings can't. So you'll have to use your buildings kind of sparingly and strategically. Some buildings generate resources, so you don't want them to be attacked by the goblins. And the goblins will change from which direction or from which point they will spawn each round as well, changing up your strategy from round to round. So moving and placing the gnomes becomes very crucial in combination with all the buildings you place. And you'll have all different types of gnomes. You can have ranged, melee focused, some attack in a straight line for several tiles, while others attack everything around them. So placing down the gnomes within the environment and your buildings becomes very crucial, and it becomes a very fun way to build your defense. You can also gain relics and upgrades, all to make it a bit more chaotic and unpredictable. I do think the style is the game's biggest weakness. I just don't like seeing this much black in a game. I wish there was less black in the game. It makes the game so bleak and drained of color. And in general, I think the game is a bit hard to look at. But gameplay wise, it's really fun, very strategic, and will give you a real challenge. Then we have Peak. It's crazy and kind of cool that basically anything can become popular on Steam. And this goes for Peak. It's a co-op climbing game where you're obviously trying to climb to the peak with your friends. And it's a very simple game, but with your friends it becomes really fun as you meet up on the airport and climb different mountains where co-op is key. And to put the craziness of this game into perspective, the game has as many active players as Marvel's Rivals when I'm recording this. Peak peaked at 114,000 players at one time. Marvel Rivals peaked at 644,000. There is a difference there, but that a game this small can become this popular is so cool to see. I can't recommend this if you're playing alone. This is definitely a game made to be played in co-op. Playing with friends, helping each other out, messing around, strategize together as you tackle procedurally generated mountains is how this game is meant to be played. The game is very easy to pick up and play. There isn't too much here to take into account. Everything in the game is built around stamina, so item, food, injuries, they all affect your stamina, making the game very easy to understand. Each climb is also split into different sections with different environments, which is very nice to see, and it also changes a bit how you approach things. And then you have campfires as a resting point in between these sections. Like, there isn't too much to this game, but it is really fun to play with friends, to just mess around and try to climb to the top. So don't underestimate this title, and jump in with a couple of friends and you'll have a good time, I guarantee it. Those were the indie games I think are the best that released these past 3 months. Don't forget to take a look at part 1 if you missed that one, covering the first 3 months of the year. And hopefully you found a few games here you haven't heard of or played. And stay tuned as well for part 3, dropping in early October. And then of course my indie games of the year at the end of the year, the same way I did last year. We've had some real bangers this year, so hopefully it continues at the back half of the year. Thank you so much for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!